My parents stole $30,000 from me, laughed about it, and called it family duty. So I cut them off. Now they're homeless, begging for mercy. My birthday was next week. I had intended to take a few days off work and maybe even go somewhere warm for once. I hadn't had a proper vacation in years, but now my entire savings cushion has disappeared overnight. I quickly called the bank to dispute the charges, hoping it was some kind of complex hoax, possibly by a hacker. However, as the lady on the other phone graciously noted, the charges were authorized by me, at least based on the signatures and PIN verification. Except, I hadn't purchased anything. I walked to the living room of my little apartment, my heart racing with wrath and confusion. And then it struck me. My parents were the only two people who had access to my information. I picked up my phone and phoned. My father responded after 2 rings, his tone oddly relaxed. "Hey son, is everything okay?" I clenched my jaw. "My credit card is maxed out, Dad. Nearly $30,000. Do you know anything about that?" There was a pause. A weighty, oppressive pause. "Well," he finally responded, his tone turning defensive. "The family needs it more. You will be all right. Are you performing well enough? You make decent money." I could feel my blood boiling. "You used my credit card?" "It's not like that," he said, his voice rising. "You constantly act as if your money is exclusively yours. We are family. Sometimes compromises must be made." Before I could reply, I heard my mother's voice in the background. She chuckled as if it were all a huge joke. "To be honest, you don't need a big birthday trip. We had better intentions for the money. This year, you can celebrate alone." For a brief moment, the entire globe appeared to tilt sideways. My breathing came in quick, shallow bursts. I worked 2 jobs throughout college, saved rigorously, skipped nights out, vacations, new clothes, and now this. I swallowed the knot in my throat and pushed my voice to be calm. "Then don't ever call me again." I ended the phone call before my father could make another entitled excuse. That night, while the city lights blinked through my window, I sat at my laptop, accessing every account they never expected me to use. The joint mortgage I had co-signed was terminated. The truck loan I co-guaranteed for my father was terminated. My mother's personal line of credit, which was attached to my name, was canceled. I did everything in silence. No fighting. No explanations. Only chilly, calculated clicks. It was not about vengeance. It was now time to draw the line I had been meaning to draw for years. They wanted to see what life would be like without me. They were about to find out, not out of cruelty, but because allowing them had nearly destroyed me. You're probably wondering how I got here, how a grown man with a steady job ended up being milked dry by his own family. It did not happen overnight. That is the sick part. They were patient, strategic. My parents saw it as a win when I secured my first real job, an entry-level financial position, right out of college. "We sacrificed everything for you," my father would continuously remind me. "You owe us. Without us, you wouldn't have that degree." My mother would say, "All we ask for is a little aid. You know, family helps family." At first there were little issues. A couple hundred people have come to help pay the house taxes. There were a few thousand there to fund my sister's sudden dental surgery. Dad's ancient truck had broken down. Could I co-sign on a new one? Mom's credit card was temporarily maxed out. I assured myself everything was good. Temporary. After all, they were responsible for my upbringing. This is what good boys do, right? However, what was intended to be transitory became permanent. My father eventually expected me to meet their mortgage deficits. My mother stopped pretending to pay me back. My younger sister Sorrel, the golden child, quit her work completely to find herself and pursue creative passions, while I silently picked up her student loan payments to keep her credit from deteriorating. My mother once said, "You make 6 figures," and waved her hand as if it was nothing. We're not asking for much. 6 figures, yeah. However, after taxes, rent, and their constant emergencies, my bank account looked like it belonged to a fast food cashier. I watched my pals buy houses, invest, and travel. I stayed in my tight apartment, eating takeaway and believing I was creating a future while depleting myself for theirs. Then it got worse. My father lost his job 2 years ago after being caught embezzling money from his firm, which I only found out after I had already loaned him approximately $40,000 to help him get through a difficult time. "It's just temporary, son," he promised, his voice heavy with phony humility. "Once I'm back on my feet, I'll pay you back in full." He never got back up. Instead, He and my mother continued to bleed me dry. My credit cards gradually became their emergency fund. They began using my identity on loan applications without telling me, forging signatures, sweet-talking bank managers, whispering, "Our son will cover it if anything goes wrong." And Sorrel. She delivered an outstanding performance. With deceptive smiles and empty promises, the helpless princess charged my accounts for new iPhones, luxury spa getaways, and yoga teacher training programs. "I will pay you back once my influencer career takes off. Please be patient, okay?" Every time I tried to set boundaries, they responded with their standard weapons of guilt and shame. "Do you want your father to lose his house? How can you be so selfish when your sister's mental health relies on this retreat? After everything we've done for you, you've evolved. Money has turned you frigid." The breaking point occurred last month. I eventually said no when my mother asked me to cover a $15,000 business loan from Sorrel's boyfriend, a deadbeat who claimed to be an entrepreneur but couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months. My father burst. "You're ruining this family," he yelled across the dinner table. "What kind of son are you?" My mother began crying on cue. Sorrel dashed upstairs, slamming the doors like a wounded teenager. "She's 26. I sat stone-faced. Not one word. Not anymore. Because that night, after everyone went to bed, I checked my credit card and discovered the $30,000 bill sitting there, ready to devour me whole. They had not even asked. They simply helped themselves. I knew the blast was coming. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly or in such an awful way. My phone began to vibrate constantly the morning after I canceled everything. 27 missed calls, 15 voicemail messages, and hundreds of texts. Some pleading, some yelling, and some scorching wrath. By noon they had waited for me. When I pulled into the parking lot after work, my dad and Sorrel were standing like wolves beside the entrance to my building. My father's face was already crimson with rage. My mother's cheeks were covered in crocodile tears. Sorrel had her arms crossed and exuded absolute entitlement. I hardly had time to latch my car door before my father charged in, finger jabbing the air like a weapon. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Sit flying. You destroyed us, you selfish fool." I did not flinch. "Not this time. I protected myself," I responded coldly. "Something none of you ever bothered to do for me." "The bank called this morning," he said. "The mortgage is frozen. The truck's been repossessed. Your mother's credit cards are locked. What gives you the right?" "The right?" I scoffed. "You stole from me. Forged my name on loans. Maxed out my credit cards. I spent years covering for your mistakes. Now you can deal with the consequences." "We're family," my mother said. "How can you do this to your own parents?" Her voice cracked like glass, but her eyes remained icy and manipulative, the same eyes that had guilt-tripped me throughout my existence. "Family doesn't steal," I snapped. "Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't use me like an ATM machine." Sorrel eventually spoke up, her voice full of disdain. "Oh please," she scoffed. "You're being so dramatic. You make good money. You weren't even using most of that credit. We just needed a little help." $30,000 isn't a little help," I yelled, my voice booming off the skyscraper. "You drained my savings. You destroyed my credit. You took my future and handed it to yourselves like I owed you my entire life." I was not angry. I was fatigued. I finally stated it aloud. Sorrel rolled her eyes, as if she were a petulant teenager who had been denied a toy. "God, you act like you're some saint. You wouldn't even have that job if Dad hadn't pushed you. We gave you everything." "No," I growled. "You took everything and I let you. But not anymore." My father moved closer, his face inches from mine and his voice falling to a low, menacing growl. "You think you're better than us now? You think you're too good for your family? You're nothing without us. You'll regret this." "No," I said quietly. "The only thing I regret is not cutting you off sooner." His face distorted, with veins protruding at the temples. "You owe us. We gave you life, and you spend it like it was your bank account," I shot back. "I worked 2 jobs through college while Sorrel took spa trips. I lived in a shoebox while you bought Dad his 3rd truck. Every time I got ahead you found new ways to pull me back down." "Enough." My mother's voice became harsh and hysterical. "We're your parents. You're supposed to take care of us." "I'm not your retirement plan," I replied, my voice as hard as steel. "I'm not your bailout. I'm not your slave." The neighbors began to gather, heads peeking out of windows, doors slightly ajar, interested faces watching the family crisis unfold in plain daylight. The final act of manipulation followed, as if on cue. My mother collapsed to her knees on the concrete, sobbing aloud for maximum effect. Please, she cried. If you walk away, we'll lose everything. The house, Dad's health, Sorrel will be homeless. Then maybe Sorrel should get a job, I stated honestly. Maybe Dad should stop living beyond his means. And maybe you should finally take responsibility for the mess you created. You heartless monster, Sorrel exclaimed. We are your family. We need you. I shook my head, looking at them intently for the first time. No, you don't need me. You need my money. You need my credit. You need someone to clean up after your endless failures. But you never needed me. You never even saw me as a person, only as a wallet. My father pushed forward, his voice trembling beneath the strain of his rage. We made you. No, I replied softly. You broke me. But I finally put myself back together without you. And then I dealt the ultimate blow. Don't ever call me again. Don't knock on my door. Don't text me. Don't pretend we're family. Because as far as I'm concerned, you never were. The hush following those comments was deafening. For a while, all three of them just stood there, blinking as if I had spoken in a foreign language they didn't understand. Then I turned, walked by them, and into my building, leaving them humiliated, impotent, and finally cut off in the parking lot. That night, for the first time in years, I did not have any nightmares. I was free. I assumed the storm had peaked that day in the parking lot. I was mistaken. That was only the beginning. When I cut them off financially, their entire house of cards fell very immediately. The mortgage firm halted my parents' loan within 4 days after my name was removed from the documentation. Their months-long failure to make payments resulted in outright default. By the end of the week, they had gotten an official foreclosure notification. My childhood house, which they had weaponized for years as a symbol of family sacrifice, was up for auction in less than 60 days. I didn't even need to lift a finger. The system took care of it for me. My father's beloved vehicle, the $70,000 enormous beast he couldn't live without, vanished at dawn one morning. The tow vehicle arrived silently. The repo man hardly looked him in the eye as my father stormed barefoot on the driveway in his tattered bathrobe. You can't take my truck, my father yelled, as if his outburst would erase the debt. However, there was nothing left to save him. By week 2, my mother's phone calls had turned from wrath to hysteria. We're going to lose everything, she sobbed on voicemail when I stopped responding to her desperate calls. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Your sister has nowhere to go. What kind of son lets this happen? I erased every mail without listening beyond the first sentence. Then Sorrel showed up. I knew she would. She looked different, smaller and paler, with fancy bags under her eyes that matched the false designer pocketbook dangling uselessly off her arm. The air of arrogance had vanished. Now there was just desperation. Please, she cried, standing at my front door, mascara streaked down her cheeks like smeared battle paint. You can't just abandon us. You know how bad it's gotten. I didn't say anything. You know, I was just following Mom and Dad, she cried. I didn't mean for things to go this far. But I'm your sister. Please, just for a little while. I stared at her for several long seconds. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. There is no pity, guilt, or sense of obligation. I'm done, Sorrel, I stated firmly. Go home if you still have one. You can't be serious, she said softly, her voice breaking. You're my brother. No, I replied, my voice as hard as iron. I was your bank, and I'm closed. Security removed her 15 minutes later. She tried again. Texts. DM's voice messages are filled with sobbing, swearing, and bargaining. She even sent distant relatives after me to beg on her behalf. Just help them get back on their feet. They're still your family. You're being cruel. Cruel. Cruel was taking every penny from my accounts while smirking on my face. Cruel forged my signature behind my back. Cruel was smiling as I skipped birthdays, vacations, and romances to correct their numerous faults. Let them face the consequences. By the end of the month, their beautiful world had vanished. They relocated to a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, far from the idyllic utopia they had ruled over everyone. The eviction was public. The neighbors whispered. The pals disappeared. My father lost what remained of his fragile ego. The man who used to yell instructions like a king was now struggling to make ends meet with part-time handyman work. His blood pressure spiked. His health deteriorated rapidly without the meds he could no longer afford. Mom tried to keep up appearances for a while, putting old images on Facebook and pretending everything was normal. Even the phony smiles cracked rapidly. The debt collectors didn't stop calling. Sorrel's ambitions to become an influencer were entirely dashed. Without my money to support her carefully managed lifestyle, her audience vanished. She jumped from couch to couch, relying on fleeting friendships that dissolved the moment she couldn't afford breakfast or split rent. One day she tried to contact me through an old friend. "She's in bad shape, man," my pal admitted, plainly uncomfortable. "She's practically homeless." "Maybe you should No," I interrupted. "I've done enough." Because that's something they've never understood. They assumed I was weak because I kept giving. But what's the truth? I had the strength to finally stop, and once I did, they crumbled from the weight of their own entitlement. Meanwhile, my life officially began. I purchased my own home, a modest but gorgeous condo, fully paid, completely mine. The peace behind those walls was incomparable. For the first time in almost a decade, I wasn't concerned about anyone else's survival. I traveled for the first time. Actual travel, not canceled plans or family emergencies. Iceland, Italy, Japan. I stood beneath the northern lights, breathing in fresh air that no longer smelled of shame. Therapy became my anchor. I exposed years of emotional manipulation, guilt shaming, and financial enslavement. My therapist once said something that stuck with me. "You never had parents. You had leeches dressed as parents." And it was true. One message finally broke the stillness. A message from Sorrel's ex-boyfriend. "Dude, I know everything now. They never deserved you. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I smiled when reading that, not because of vindication but out of serenity. Because for the first time in my life, I was not the antagonist. I was free. It's interesting how stillness used to scare me. For years, quiet indicated the storm was approaching. Another call, another crisis. Another financial trap cloaked in remorse and family responsibilities. Now, silence feels liberating. The weight that has been sitting on my chest for years is gone. No more calls. No more screams. No more begging. No more manipulation. Just peace. I sit on my balcony every night now. I have my own place. I have my own money. My personal selections. The skyline lights in front of me, serving as a continual reminder that I survived. I no longer feel angry. That burned out a long time ago. What remains is clarity. For years, I was indoctrinated to believe that my worth was determined by how much I could sacrifice for others. That loyalty meant bleeding for individuals who didn't care about my well-being. They named it family. But it never was love. It was business. A one-way transaction, in which I paid and they accepted. The most dangerous falsehood did not involve fake documents. It was not the stolen money. It was a falsehood they told me since I was a child. Good boys always look after their families. Good sons do not become hostages. Good boys do not become financial accounts. Good sons do not lose themselves to people who are only interested in consuming. They felt that cutting me off would destroy me. Instead, chopping them off rescued me. The final mail I ever received from my mother is still unopened in my inbox. "We didn't raise you to be so chilly." And maybe she's correct. Because they did not raise me at all. I raised myself. And for years, I carried it without complaint, believing that was what love looked like. They established their kingdom on my back. When I finally stepped up, their reign crumbled. Now I can sleep without debt collectors hunting me. Without last-minute emergencies depleting my funds. Without false birthday meals that resembled tax audits rather than family celebrations. I wake up, drink my coffee, and feel completely relaxed. And you know what? I am not bitter. I am not angry. I am free. If you ask me today about my regrets, I'll tell you the same thing every time. Not because I wanted to injure them. But I had to pick myself once. I regret not walking away sooner. Because the moment I selected myself, I started to live.